Love. 3 hindrances to love. Still back in John chapter 15, so we can turn there. John 15, chapter 15 and verse number 1. It says, Jesus said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman or the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you will, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. And then verse number 17 says something similar. It says, this is my command, love each other, or love one another. Also, 1 John chapter number 4 and verse number 7 is very similar, and I want to read just 3 verses in 1 John 4, verse 7, 11, and 21. Verse 7 says, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Verse number 11, Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. And verse 21, in this commandment we have from him that the one who loves God should love his brother also. Interestingly enough, Jesus spoke to us about 20 times, probably a little over 20 times, and he said, love one another. So there's times for those of you that have children that you tell your children over and over and over again, whatever it is, you're going to tell them over and over again until they get it right, or until they do it, or until they, whatever you've asked them to do, that they do that. And so Christ asks us over and 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 over, 20 times, at least 20 times, to love one another. The theme of the Bible is love. It's the love story of God. It's how much he loved you, how much he loved me, how much he loved this world and the people in this world. And I think we as you walk with God long enough, you know that. You come to that conclusion. Yes, God is love, and we sang, and it was beautiful this morning, Nick, and about the love of God. That Jesus would step out of eternity and wrap himself around human skin and interact with us and express the love of God to broken humanity. What a beautiful love story that really is. And I think we get it, and I love it, and I love to worship him, and I love those words. I'll never forget being about 23 years of age, probably 22 years of age. I was 22. And God said to me, I was just walking in Columbus, Ohio at a park, and it was at night. I'd worked till 9 o'clock that night. Pretty much that was my schedule. And then I would afterwards just go for a walk during those times in the fall. And I was just walking and just talking to God. And I'll never forget, he spoke to me and he says, I love you with an everlasting love. And at the time, I struggled with receiving the love of God. And I was thinking, well, why do you love me? Why do you love me with an everlasting love? And so now I've been able and had this opportunity to walk with God. And I think that's one aspect. I think a lot of us get the love of God. The question I have for all of us is why do we struggle with loving one another? I mean, can I just really go into the depths of it? And it's easy to love the lovable. That even though the world can do that, they can appreciate people that are kind and lovely and easy and we use the word compliant. They do whatever you ask them to do, and they do it with a happy heart, or they do it with a heart that is willing to serve, and that's easy for all of us. If it's a coworker, if it's a boss that's interacting with us and that's very kind and very gentle, and that's easy to say, oh yeah, I love my boss, or I love my coworker, or I love my child, or I love my mom, or I love my dad, those are easy. But what about the unlovable? What about the people that are kind of like the sandpaper in our life that is a little rough, and just we already know that whenever we interact with them, we might even avoid the conversation because the tension seems to be a little high and there seems to be a little friction. And what about loving one another? And I think the hardest thing about the ecclesia, the church, is this. It's whenever we gather together and we bring our own dysfunction and the dysfunction of our past and the pain of our past and the brokenness of our past and the hurt of our past and all those things, and if we've not been healed yet, and we bring this into what we call the family of God, and we have to interact with who we call a brother and who we call a sister, and that's where real Christianity takes its root, and we have to walk it out and walk out love and love one another. But why is there a struggle? Why do I struggle at times? Why do you struggle at times with that? Well, I believe that there's 3 hindrances that hinders us from love. The first one is this. It's found in Matthew chapter 13 and we'll start in verse number 13, but the first one is a calloused heart, or a hard heart. Matthew 13:13 says, "Therefore I speak to them in parables, because while seeing they do not see, and while hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. In their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is being fulfilled, which says, you will keep on hearing, but will not understand. You will keep on seeing, but will not perceive. For the heart of this people has become dull." That means to make thick. It means it's thickened. It's hard. With their eyes they scarcely hear, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they would see with their eyes, and they would hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and return, and I would heal them. A calloused heart, a hard heart. How does that happen? I mean, I'm not talking about them out there. Everything I say, for the most part, is for the body of Christ. It's for those that profess Christ, for those that say, I'm a follower of Christ, I'm a believer, I'm a redeemed, I've given my life to Christ, I'm a Christian, I wear the label of a Christian, I'm born again, I'm saved, I'm redeemed. All those things, the terms that we use, that's who I'm talking about. How do we get a hard heart? How does our heart become callous? How does it become hard along the way? There's a beautiful song that is sung. It was way before our time. There's some people in here that maybe was in your time, but it was the song of its day, and it was written by a man by the name of Keith Green, and since then it has been re-recorded, and even present day, some people still sing that song. But in this song, Keith Green he's already well known. He's already traveling around the world. He was a prodigy even at the age of 15, 16, before he ever knew Christ. He was a prodigy in California. He was just this phenomenal, incredible singer, and the world wanted to exploit him. And he didn't know Christ yet, but he came to know Christ, and God did some amazing things through his life. And so here he is. He's playing the piano, and he's singing all over the world. And he said, I was having this conversation with God, and he said, I wanted to write God a letter. So he said, I wrote it, and it was about midnight, and I wrote this letter to God, and he said, I didn't know where to send it. So what I did is I put it in my Bible. That was the only address I knew where to send it to. He said, I put it in my Bible. He said, I started having this conversation with God, and he says, God, my heart is getting a little hard. It's become callous. I've been serving you for a while now, but it's getting a little callous. It's getting a little hard. And I want to have like baby skin around my heart. And he says, God, it's not the things that I'm doing, it's the things that I'm not doing. And then right around midnight, he begins to pen the words of this song. And all the way till about 2 a.m., he wrote this song. He said, oh Lord, you're beautiful. and your face is all I seek. For when your eyes are on this child, your love abounds in me. That's where that song was written, out of this time of having a heart that has become callous. So maybe for you, it's not necessarily what you've done. It's not all the things that maybe you've done. It's maybe the things you haven't been doing. Maybe it's a matter of worship. Maybe like that song just got me this morning, that like I don't have anything that's fit for a king. I thought to myself, I have nothing except for my own life. And I always want to keep in check. I always want to be there. I always want to sit at the feet of Jesus. I always want to remind myself that the highest place I can ever get is at the feet of Jesus. And I always want to keep myself in check with that. That I feel this overwhelming love of God, that it's just my way of saying, God, I have nothing. There's nothing. That's what Paul said. Everything else in my life, it's just rubbish. It's the past. Every accolade, every success, everything the world would call that I was successful. He says, I counted all but dung, but rubbish. I counted nothing but garbage, because all I have is this life that I can offer him. So maybe for you, it's not the things that you've been doing, but it's the things that you haven't been doing. How long has it been that maybe you sat at his feet and just to worship him with your tears? You worship him with your heart. Or even though you've been serving God for a while, but you're not where you once were. So what is the cure then for a dull or calloused heart? Well, Christ tells us in those words. It says in verse 15 of Matthew 13, for the heart of this people has become dull. But towards the end of that verse, it says, and understand with their heart, he says, this is what happens. You've got to return, and then I will heal you. You've got to return. Something in the turning towards God. This is what I learned about God, is that once I take a step towards God, he comes running after me. It's just that one, I've got to be the initiator of this relationship. I've got to be the one that says, I'm just going to take one step closer to God, and then his grace comes running to me. You need an encounter with the Holy Spirit. That's what we went to this past week. And just to see my sons and myself being touched by God, you got to have an encounter with the Holy Spirit. Amen. Where you really feel him and you feel his love. You feel his presence. You're just overwhelmed by who he is. The second thing that's a hindrance to love is this. It's an impure heart. An impure heart is a heart that still loves the things of this world. I mean, it still has a pleasure for the things of this world. It's a heart that hasn't let go of the lusts of the world. It's a heart that's still being conformed to the pattern of this world. Impurity will always choke out the flow of love. So we have this water hose, that you have to replace them ever so often. They get hard and they get tied up. And so I bought the kind of the latest ones, the ones that are like real, you turn them on and all of a sudden they extend like to 100 feet and then like, whoop, they shrink or whatever. And this one is kind of in between that and the other one. But I've noticed whenever I water our plants, it's just like a little kink in it, and you hear this, the water has stopped. And because it's not firm enough, and it just takes just one little turn, and that thing, kind of kinks, and it's not flowing properly. And that's what an impure heart will do. That love is just not. It's flowing, but it's not flowing the way it needs to be flowing, because there's a kink somewhere. It's a heart that is still in the world, but still has one foot here. And if you wonder, well, Pastor, your spiritual life and your faith and your spiritual development and where did all that come from? Well, I can trace it back to my parents and my parents' devotion to Christ and their devotion to each other and their love for each other and their love for me. And my mom was a very bold individual, extremely bold. And I remember she told us, she said, as a follower of Christ, you can't have one foot in the world and then one foot in your relationship with Christ. You got to choose. It's one way or the other. You can't be half-hearted this way and half-hearted this way. You got to have a whole heart for God and a wholehearted devotion. 1 John 2:15 says this. It says, "Do not love the world nor the things of the world. If anyone loves the world, that the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the boastful pride of life is not from the Father, but it's from the world." He says, "The world is passing away and also its lust, but the one who does the will of God lives forever." See, one thing I've learned is wherever the mind goes, the man will follow. Like, where's your mind been? That's what the man, your will follow wherever your mind has been. 1 Peter 1:13 says this. It says, "Therefore prepare your minds for action. Keep sober in spirit. Fix your hope completely on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the former lusts which were yours in your ignorance, but like the Holy One who has called you, be holy yourselves also in all your behavior, because it is written, 'You shall be holy, for I am holy.'" I was walking not too long ago. It just came out of my mouth. I was just talking to God. I kept saying, "Keep me in holiness." I've never prayed anything like that, because I know righteousness is what he does and holiness is what I do, and it's a choice. But I just kept saying, "Lord, keep me in holiness. Keep me, preserve me, keep me in holiness. Keep me in a place where I'm living my life for you. Keep me. Keep my mind alert and sober." See, a love for the things of this world will always quench your love for God. Luke 11, or Luke chapter 8, verse 11, Luke chapter 8 and verse number 11, out of the Amplified, it says this, "Now the meaning of this parable is this, that the seed is the word of God. Those along the traveled road are the people who have heard. Then the devil comes and carries away the message out of their hearts, that they may not believe or acknowledge me as their Savior, and devote themselves to me and be saved here and hereafter. And those upon the rock are the people who, when they hear the word, they receive the word and they welcome it with joy. But these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of trial and temptation, they fall away, they withdraw, and they stand aloof. And as for what fell among the thorns, these are the people they hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked and suffocated with the anxieties, the cares, the riches, and the pleasures of life. And their fruit does not ripen. It does not come to maturity and perfection." So what is the remedy then for an impure heart, or a heart that isn't fully committed yet or fully devoted to the Lord? What is the remedy? What's the cure? What's in Isaiah chapter 35 and verse number 7? The remedy of an impure heart is to choose the highway of holiness. Isaiah 35:7 says, "The parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water, and the habitation of jackals, where each lay, there shall be grass with reeds and rushes. A highway shall be there, and a road, and it shall be called the highway of holiness. The unclean shall not pass over it, but it shall be for others. Whoever walks the road, although a fool, shall not go astray. No lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast go upon it. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there." Hallelujah. What is he saying? So there is a highway. It's called the highway of holiness. If you choose to walk with God, there is a place, and I'm going to read it here in just a little bit, but there's a place where the evil one touches you not. He cannot touch you when you walk with God. It's a highway of holiness. It's the road less traveled. It's the narrow path. It's the narrow road. It's not the broad way. It's not where everyone else is going. Very few find this road. There's not many people that you're going to find that are going to be on this road. But when you choose to walk the highway of holiness and you're walking with him, it says there's not going to be a ravenous beast that's going to be found there. That even the fool gets wisdom on this road. There's something incredible about the highway of holiness. 1 John 5:18 says this. It says, we know, 1 John 5:18 out of the Amplified, we know absolutely that anyone born of God does not deliberately and knowingly practice committing sin, but the one who was begotten of God carefully watches over and protects him. Christ's divine presence within him preserves him against the evil, and the wicked one, the evil one, does not lay hold get a grip on him or touch him. It's the highway of holiness. Number 3, an insincere heart. Sincere means to be free from pretense or deceit. It means to be honest. It means to be true. It means to be genuine. But an insincere is to play the part, to pretend, to be hypocritical. To better understand the word sincere, you have to look at the antonym or the opposite of that meaning, which is, again, to play the part. The word comes from a Greek word that means actor. The word hypocrite ultimately came into English from the Greek word hypokrites, which means an actor or a stage player. The Greek word itself is a compound noun. This is basically what it says. It says to an interpreter from underneath. So what does that mean? Well, they would literally put on a mask. And there was an individual that was playing a part, and whatever mask was available, here they are, well, just say it's David, that's me, and this is who you know. But then as an actor, I would come and I would put on whatever mask it was, and so I would put that on, so I'm playing that part from underneath. Underneath this, it's David, but I'm playing whatever role, whatever part has been given to me. And that's the root meaning of hypokrites, which is a hypocrite. It's to play the part. So an insincere heart is somebody that just kind of goes through the motions. It plays the part, that wears the label, that is whatever you want him to be, or she's whatever you want her to be. What is the remedy for an insincere heart? Well, Romans 12:9 gives us insight to what that is. Romans 12:9 says, "Let love be without hypocrisy." Let it be without playing the part. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in brotherly love, give preference to one another in honor. I'm going to have Josue, Josh is going to play a video. I was going to kind of share the story, but I want you to hear Pastor Jim Cymbala from his own words out of Brooklyn, New York, and it's just a beautiful picture of, he calls it a preacher in need, and how we can also play the part. And so, Josue, if you can play that video for us this morning.
To me in our previous facility on an Easter Sunday, when I preached for the 3rd time that day, was bone tired. Poured out myself. The singers, choir had done a cantata, and people had come to Christ, and I prayed, and I got through with the meeting. The other building had a platform with no steps, so it was my habit to just sit like this and let my feet dangle down on the edge of the platform. And I was like, right, it's just about this same angle with the middle aisle. And I'm just saying, so tired. I remember taking my knot on my tie and loosening it and saying, you know what, I'm just gonna chill. And Carol was playing just like Jamal's playing now, exactly. People praying, workers, deacons helping. And I was tired. I want to go home. Hadn't eaten all day. And then I look, and around the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row, there's a guy in the aisle around level with the 5th row. He had a cap, filthy cap, but he had it in his hand. And he was staring at me and looking at me, and I could tell by his eyes, like he wanted to know, could he come up here and talk to me? And I just looked at him a little closer. Man, the guy was disheveled, filthy looking, matted hair, a mess. He looked in his 50s. He actually was 31. And I just looked at him. And I thought, because Everton, Tulia, they remember back in that building, we had a lot of people panhandling in the church. They would come in and ask for money, and we had procedures of what to do when people ask for money. So we don't want to build their habit and hand them money. They'll just go out and drink it. And I thought to myself, what a bummer. because I'm going to have to give money. I'm not even going to go through the procedures. I'm going to just give this guy some money. I had no wallet then. I had a money clip. So I waved him up, and he came. So I'm here. He got to about 5-6 feet away from me. Whoa, 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 whoa. Smell? No, a smell? You think you've smelled something? I'll match that smell with anything you've ever smelled in your life. A mixture of feces, urine, sweat, street, and alcohol. Stir gently and let it cook for a while, and that's what I smell. Nasty. I looked away to inhale, and I started questioning, what's your name, David? Okay, I'm a minister. Let me go through at least the procedures here. So, man, you look bad. I didn't know he was laying in his own urine right outside the side door on Park Place in that building. And he heard the music, and it drew him in. He was just sprawled, laying out there. So, he's there. Oh, Lord. Where'd you sleep last night? Deserted truck. How come you're not in a shelter? Too dangerous. Almost got killed the last one I was in. Okay. Man, this guy smells bad. Missing one or two teeth. At least one right in the front. Let me give him $5, something. Not the way I wanted to end the day, but, you know, what can you do? Took out the money. I remember handing it. Pushed it down. Said, I don't want your money. I want this Jesus you were talking about. And at that moment, I forgot all about David, because I knew who was really in need of prayer. It was Jim Cymbala. It wasn't David. So I forgot him. I lifted my hands, like I'm going to ask you to do in a moment. And I just said, God, please forgive me. What have I become? What kind of cheap two-bit preacher have I become? You sent somebody who's searching for you. And I want to give him a few dollars and get rid of him. Please help me. And God, that moment, baptized me with a love, with something, with grace. He saw how pitiful I was. And David knew it. And he drew close to me. And I started to cry. And he started to cry. And then he fell against me. And he put his head over here. And I put my arms around him. And he put his arms around me. And for a while we just rocked back and forth. A preacher in need of God. A guy from the street in need of God. I'm not sure who was needier. Might have been me. You know what God spoke to me that moment? And this is not trendy at all. Those of you who want to go to like church growth institutes, this is not what this church is about. God spoke to me and said, you see that smell? If you don't love that smell, I can never use you. Because the whole world smells that way to me. All the stinking, filthy sin of mankind. I sent my son to die for that smell. So you're either going to embrace it and love people in my name, or I can't use you. I'll put you on the shelf. And if God is my witness, you can believe it or not, suddenly that smell became like the most beautiful lady's perfume you ever smelled in your life. It was just overwhelmed me. He was weeping, I was weeping. I led him to Christ. We prayed, we detoxed him for 4 or 5 days. Hired him on church staff, housekeeping. He spent Thanksgiving and Christmas at my house that year. My buddy got his teeth fixed, handsome guy. For that Christmas, all he had, he gave me a handkerchief. He wrapped it up in wrapping paper, gave me a white handkerchief. I kept it for years. It meant more to me than anything anyone could give me. You could have bought me a car. I would have said, keep your car. Give me that handkerchief. And what broke him and what broke me is God's love. Brothers and sisters, let's walk in love this year. Let's think about other people. Let's love other people. If they're different than us, think different than us, look different than us, smell different than us. I didn't grow up around that smell. I was blessed, fortunate, middle class, Polish, Ukrainian, middle class home. That wasn't my world. But it's God's world. And he wants to use all of us.
So we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to have you guys, we won't finish by having somebody come up and recap what you discussed, but I do want you to pray for one another. So as a church, you know, you can blame me. You know, I don't see color. I don't see color. I don't see socioeconomic background. We have people from like every background you can think of. There's people that'll, you know, we're in an area sometimes I think, man, Lord, you know, the challenges that come with this area. There's a lady, she stops by, she's talking to herself. She leaves me notes at the mailbox here. I can't even decipher her notes, and she'll say, did you get my letter? And I say, yeah, I did. I didn't tell her I couldn't read it, but I got it, because there's no space. It's just like, she'll say, just can you pray for me? She said, I'm going to court, or can you just pray for me? I said, yeah, I'll pray for you. So I just pray for her. And she always says, you know, I just feel better whenever you pray for me. So my wife taught me years ago to always stop for the one. Like, don't forget about the one. So one time I get this phone call. Well, actually, I was waiting on her. She had gone to Walmart. And, you know, let's just say she goes normally for an hour, hour and a half, however long it was. What hours had passed, I thought, man, I wonder what Sarah's buying. And so finally she gets home, and I said, so she begins to tell me what happened. She said, I was leaving, and I saw a guy, and he was like in his late 70s. She said he kind of was like maneuvering himself out with a rope outside of his truck. And he was trying to get himself in a wheelchair so that he could go and shop. She said, his name was Joseph. She said, I sparked up this conversation with him. And the next thing you know it, Sarah had actually come home to get something. And you know what she got? She got all the things you could get to cut his hair. I mean, that's not even her background. It's not something she ever studied. She just wanted to go and help him and cut his hair. So she was going back, and she cut his hair. And then Joseph started coming to our church. I mean, he's with the Lord now, and you know, there was a smell that he carried. Never forget. We would have to get some baby powder and put it on his chair afterwards. And I was just reminded. I mean, when I was watching this video, like that smell, maybe that smell for us might be a challenge, but that's what the Lord smells with the world that we live in. And I always want to have a tender heart towards the world. This is what keeps me in check. This is what reminds me all the time, as such were some of you, that was me, or that was my family lineage, that we would have been like that had it not been for an encounter with God. So today what I want to do is just want you to, we're only going to do it for a couple more weeks until we get back to school, just the tables. But I want you to, maybe we can fill up some of these tables, but I want you to just pray for each other. Maybe there's a need that you can meet. Maybe the need is prayer. Maybe that's all they need. Maybe it was like this homeless guy, that he was just needing prayer. Maybe that's what you need, is you just need prayer. Maybe there's some other needs that you want to mention. You just never know how God will move. But that's how I want to close this out this morning. I just want you to pray for one another and just ask each other, is there something I can pray for? What can we pray for? And that's how we're going to close this service this morning. So if we can just kind of join in, and some of the tables that have less amount of people, if you guys can join in with another table. And we're just going to pray for each other this morning.